Okay, welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I come from the acting background.
And I'm Josh Knapp. I'm a broadcast engineer.
Here we go.
All right, today we're going to talk about animated movies. But before that, we're going to get into a couple of things that have happened within the last week with award season already upon us. The Academy Awards have already been announced, but we're now getting awards from Producers Guild and Screen Actors Guild.
Yes.
So where do you want to go first?
Well, we can talk about the SAGs.
Okay.
They were pretty interesting. I think that the Golden Globes is like 65% accurate to predicting the Oscars. I think the Screen Actors Guild is 90-some percent.
Wow.
It's pretty accurate. Interestingly enough, Michael Keaton did not win.
Yeah, Eddie Redmayne won.
Well, I think
Is
that...
it because it's a showier performance?
No, I just think that as an actor, what's the last thing we said about him? Do you remember when we talked about the theory of everything? The last thing we were talking about with him is the fact that he had to sit in that position, in that chair for those amount of hours.
Yeah.
Right there, that's dedication. He had to have been there physically. Whether or not he was emotionally or mentally there is up to the opinion of the viewer. But he had to physically do that.
He had to do the job.
Yeah, and 12, 18 hours on the set doing that. I mean, I'm sure he wasn't like that all the time. And I've not heard anything about him being method where he had to stay like that. So I'm sure he took breaks. But just to even be in the shot for 10, 15 minutes like that, and your body's not naturally like that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's not. So I think that's the physicalization of it actors can appreciate. So it was a bit of a surprise, which I like the surprise. I was surprised because I thought if actors were going to vote for an actor, you would vote for an actor playing an actor in a movie, Michael Keaton. It's lined up for that.
Yeah.
But he didn't win. And interestingly enough, Boyhood did not win Best Picture, which I thought it would because it used more actors, and Imitation Game did too. So the Screen Actors Guild is not... It's not a picture award. It's a best ensemble award. So it usually goes to the cast that has the most people in it, basically, because they're, giving more jobs to actors. But it didn't. It went to Birdman, which I thought was kind of a surprise. But everything else was straight down the line, pretty much.
Yeah, Julianne Moore, J.K. Simmons, Patricia Arquette.
Yeah.
Downton Abbey.
Right, which is a huge cast.
That's true. You're right. Against Boardwalk Empire. Oh, Game of Thrones is a big cast.
Yeah, they're all big cast in TV.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing is last week when we talked about the Oscar nominations and we talked about the controversy about African-American people being left off the list and, pretty much came to the conclusion, at least I did, that it was about the roles not being written. 2 African-American women won Best Lead Actress and Best Lead Actress in a Comedy. And that's never happened before. And very interestingly enough, Viola Davis won for Murder. What is it? How to Get Away with Murder, right? And she said, when we, quote unquote, are given the opportunity to live in the narrative, we will rise to the occasion, but the roles are not being written. I was like, I just said that last week. As she's living it. She said and I use the word we on purpose because that's the word she used. Once people are giving the roles, it doesn't matter what the color of their skin is, but the roles are not being written. So I think to back that up, that's why the Oscar nominations look the way that they look. But, we're coming a long way. So there it is.
One thing that I noticed, and this is kind of off topic of movies, but it's Best Actor in a Drama Series. All of the actors that were nominated were from HBO or Netflix shows.
Read them to me.
It was Steve Buscemi from Boardwalk Empire, Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones, Woody Harrelson, and Matthew McConaughey from True Detective, which is another reason why I need to watch True Detective.
Yeah, I know.
And
I will.
And the last one who won was Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, which was
from
good.
House of Cards. I love it.
Yeah.
But that shows the changing landscape of... It shows 2 things. It shows the changing landscape of television and of dramatic series. It also shows the willingness of movie stars, quote unquote, to dig into movie series, television series that are maybe, I don't want to say higher caliber, but are meatier than, NCIS or Law and Order.
Although both of those are Academy Award nominees in those shows. Sam Waterston and Gary Sinise are both nominees for Oscars. So that crossover between TV and movies no longer exists. It's not, people tend to used to think that you were stepping down when you did TV after you were a movie star or a movie actor or won the Oscar or so forth and so on. That no longer exists. That line no longer exists. You're right. It's about the meaty roles. And all 5 of those actors, it's like they're in little mini movies every episode.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. And I'm glad Kevin Spacey won because he was really good in that season. She did not, but that's okay. Viola Davis won instead. So I'll step back.
And there's other good performances too. I've seen Orphan Black.
No, I'm dying to see it, and I'm dying to see Orange is the New Black too, but I've got enough.
No, exactly.
You know, I'm in Mad Men right now. I'm in Masters of Sex. I'm in all these TV shows. I just saw Transparent. I saw the whole season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did.
Great.
Watched it from beginning, middle to end, all the way through. Fantastic.
Oh, wow.
We should do a TV/mini movie episode because it's something to talk about. All the actors. Oh, you know who's in Transparent? I knew I would be able to get this in. Is it Duplass? Is it the Duplass?
Mark Duplass?
Jay
Duplass. I've never
excellent.
seen him in
He's
anything.
Excellent. There's tones and ways that he walks and talks that reminds me of his brother.
Really?
Now I don't know which one's older. I think this one's younger.
I'm not sure.
But he's excellent, dude. The whole supporting cast of this show is excellent.
So you watched that over this past week, and I watched 2 episodes of Togetherness, which is Mark and Jay Duplass's HBO show.
Now, is this the one with Melanie Linsky?
Yes.
Yes.
She is good.
She's great.
See, Amanda Peet kind of grates on you, but it's her character,
Right.
and I'm trying to keep that separate.
Yeah.
So it's Melanie Linsky and Mark Duplass are married. Her sister is in the show, and his brother is in the show, and it's the interaction between them, and they have kids. The married couple has kids, so it's just kind of like only the first 2 episodes, but so it's just getting into character development and stuff. But there are some great episodes already, and Melanie Linsky
she's top notch.
She's beautiful too.
Absolutely,
and
she is.
Yeah.
See, you've got to see Away We Go.
Okay, she's in that?
Yes, the Sam Mendes movie. Yes, she's got this small, it's not a small role, it's a supporting role, but I don't want to tell you, you got to see it because she's just fantastic. Every time I see her, this sigh of relief comes over me like I'm in for something good because she's in the film. Or the TV show or whatever, because she is a supporting character on 2.5 Men.
Oh, I didn't know
where
that.
she played Charlie Sheen's crazy obsessed neighbor who believed he was in love with her, but he didn't even really know who she was. Yeah, and she would talk to him as if he's in love with her and all this stuff. But anyway, she's top notch.
Oh, that's great.
I can't wait till she finally comes to everybody's. We know
Radar,
about her, and Hollywood knows about her, thank goodness. But nobody knows. If I said Melanie Linsky, I just learned her name a couple months ago, actually. I mean, I've always known it. Like, I recognize it, but
Well, to me, it seems like there was a period of time where, according to me, she wasn't working or I wasn't seeing her because I saw her in Heavenly Creatures, and then it's like Kate Winslet just goes, pew, and
yeah. Kate Winslet. But she's been steadily working. If you look at her bio, you go,
I bet.
yeah, I saw. Oh yeah, she's in that. Oh yeah, she's in that. Oh yeah, she's in that. She's the sister in Up in the Air. She's George Clooney's sister who gets the pictures taken with their cutout photograph. She asked all her friends to take her significant other and her picture to landmarks and take
a cutout.
You remember that?
I don't remember that. I only saw that movie once, but
yeah, fantastic.
Okay.
She's a small role, but once again, when she's on screen, it just pops. Anyway, we went off on a tangent there.
That's okay. So let's move on to Producers Guild. Producers Guild does give you it's outstanding producer of a theatrical motion picture. So it's not a best picture, but it's outstanding producer.
I will tell you this: the last 9 best pictures were predicted by the Producer Guild Award. So 8 pictures. The last 8 pictures to win Producer Guild also won Best Picture. And Birdman won.
Yep.
And people were shocked by that because think about producing a film that took 12 years. You would think that the guy from I don't know who produced Boyhood.
But it was probably Richard Linklater.
Yeah. Speaking of which, can we clarify how to say his name? Okay. You say Linklater, okay? When they announced the Oscar nominations, they said Linklater. I've always said Linklater, okay? And I thought, okay, I've been pronouncing this wrong. And then when I reheard the Boyhood episode, you say Linklater, I say Linklater, okay? Then when Patricia Arquette just won, she said Linklater. So what is his name?
I just listened to a podcast with him on it.
Okay.
And I'll have to go back and see if I can't find that, and maybe I'll put it in the podcast notes, but or maybe I can drop it in magically right here.
Richard Linklater.
So anyway, I've been thinking about that since I heard the podcast. I was like, wait, we're both pronouncing it differently, but I heard professional people pronounce it like you did, and then other professional people pronounce it like I did. So I'm like, I want to get it right. I mean, I want to give the man due respect. But anyway, back to the Producer Guild Awards. He or whoever produced Boyhood did not win. Birdman won, which shocked a lot of people because, 12 years of production, well, even though it's a week every 12 years, whatever it was, still, it's a lot to put together because the producer puts together everything basically and pretty much manages the money and so forth.
Budgeting, it's
yes. The executive producer says, here's the check. The producer says, okay, so forth and so on. So it looks like we're locking Birdman into Best Picture, but I have a feeling you will not know until the envelopes open on Oscar night. I'm not certain about anything this year.
Yeah. It's kind of all over the place. Life Itself did win for documentary, even though it wasn't even nominated as a documentary.
Everybody's having a fit about that.
That it wasn't nominated?
Yeah.
Why would it be nominated by people who got their movies ripped apart by Roger Ebert, possibly?
Well, hopefully in a perfect world, we would be objective about that and say whether or not it was a good documentary or not, because there have been political documentaries that people don't agree with that won Best Picture and so forth and so on. And the Green or the Al Gore film,
Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah, did you see that?
Nope.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I've seen a couple of Michael Moore's things, but I haven't seen Inconvenient Truth.
Prime example. So whether or not you politically believe in any of those issues, you can still be objective. At least I would like to believe that people could be objective. But these things, there's weird qualifications for documentaries and different things. We talked about that with Hoop Dreams and how they picked that back then. The rules changed because of that. Yeah. But I want to see that.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one I'll talk about is the Lego Movie, which won for animated motion picture.
It's won quite a few awards, and it was not nominated.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what happened there, I guess. But I just saw Lego Movie a couple days ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. There could be a possible issue that would be possible spoilery territory that I'm thinking might be a reason why it didn't get nominated. So
we got to put it on hold, because I didn't see it.
In the future,
yeah.
But I think I might know exactly why it didn't get nominated. So,
do you think I'm going to pick up on it when I see it?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
And anyway, so speaking of animated movies, we'll start our talk of animated movies, and it's gonna kind of be just a general. I mean, we're not really doing lists, or at least I didn't.
Not a top 10.
Do a top 10 list, and I think for such a broad category like animated movies, it's really difficult to do a list because I, of course, started categorizing things. And one of the ones that I really want to get to, we don't have to start off with it, is animated movies for adults. Okay. And there's definitely some of those.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not talking about, Ghost in the Shell or, these TV shows type things that are Japanese manga or however you say that. I'm not talking about those necessarily. I'm talking about feature-length movies, but there are definitely some feature-length movies that are not anywhere close to being for kids. So I wanted to see if you've seen any, and I've only seen a handful.
Yeah, I don't know anything you're talking about.
Have you seen Akira?
No, and I keep hearing about it, and I want to see it, but I have not.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting, and it's kind of disturbing, and I feel like I'm missing things. I feel like I'm missing, the purposes, and I feel like an outsider kind of. I feel like what maybe foreign people may feel like when they watch a specifically American-centric movie. Like, I mean, I was speaking to Richard Linklater. Like, imagine somebody from another country watching Dazed and Confused. It's like.
Yeah, that's true.
Kind of like so it's a different time, and it's a different.
It's a good or that's a good comparison.
Feeling, and there's references that they're not going to get. So that's kind of what I felt like for that movie. But there's other movies. I listened to a podcast a long time ago. It's a pretty popular podcast called Film Spotting, and they were going through foreign animated movies, and there's one that they watched was The Grave of the Fireflies, and it's a Japanese movie. It's about the end of World War II, and it's about these two kids whose dad is out fighting in World War II and whose mom dies, and it's just like total. I will never see that movie, but I mean, I don't say that, but I really would have to be coaxed in some magical way to see that movie. Just hearing them talk about it made me really sad.
And it's
just
animated. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
It's a feature-length animated movie, came out in the 80s, I think, and it's just, I mean, there's no way that I wouldn't think that kids would want to watch that movie, or I wouldn't think I would want to show my kids that movie if I had kids, you know.
Well, just because it's animated, I don't think it's necessarily a kids thing. And then you also have those movies that are animated for kids that have adult things and themes in them that go right over the kid's head, but the parents,
the adults love it.
Yeah, there's quite a few in Toy Stories too, which kind of push the envelope a
Or
little bit.
Shrek.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, Shrek's a little bit more obvious, but there's a couple in Toy Story, especially the first one, where when they're all teaming up to be moving partners, and then Buzz Lightyear shows up, and Little Bo Peep saunters across the floor and goes, "I found my moving partner." I was like, "Wait, what?" And she says it really in a sexual way, and the way she's moving her body and everything. I was like, "Wait!" And kids don't know what that was about, and it's put in there to make it as interesting for adults as it is for,
because they know adults are going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not only that, but I think a great film, no matter whether it's a real life picture or an animated film, it doesn't matter whether or not was for kids or for adults. If it has a universal theme and the narrative works, it doesn't matter what it was for. Like I find Finding Nemo as interesting as any animated film. So forth and so on. So anyway,
yeah. I mean, and then there's the animated movies that I grew up on. I'm assuming you grew up on, kind of like the Walt Disney animated movies from all the way back to Snow White to, I mean, there were movies that were coming out as I was growing up. Aladdin was probably my favorite animated movie in that time frame. I mean, but just growing up on Jungle Book and those types of movies.
They just made a live version of it. It's coming out.
Huh.
Yeah. First time since the animated version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be interesting.
The animated version came out like in the 60s, I think.
Yeah. I used to watch it repetitively when it was on when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would have the kind of like the VHSs of
pop in, pop out, pop in, pop out. Yeah.
Of those. And then my sister got into not Aladdin, but like the cheap sequel to Aladdin that never came out in theaters.
No, I never saw it.
Yeah, she just played that on repeat. Like Return of Jafar is what it was called.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And it was just, Robin Williams wasn't even in the movie.
Yeah, it was some guy doing a kind of a takeoff. Yeah, it was not good.
It was bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
I love that kids do that though. They just pop it in, turn it on, and keep repeating.
Just keep it going.
My nephews were into the live version of Fat Albert.
Really?
Yeah, he was like 2.5. Albert. He'd say Albert, and if you would turn it off, he would flip out.
Oh no!
Yeah, and then you have to turn it back on. Albert.
So they kind of glom on to something.
Yeah.
Like they identify with something.
Yeah, and to this day, he's only 5 or 6 now, and to this day, he still gets this sparkle in his eye when you talk about Albert. He's like, "Oh, I love that movie." Yeah,
so
I love
cool.
that kind of stuff.
That's great. So, I mean, I guess we could start with Disney in general. I mean, wouldn't you say that Disney kind of started the feature? I mean, they did. That wasn't the first feature-length animation, like classic animated movie, Snow White. I mean, from all the research I've done, that's what I found. And
it's on everybody's top 10 list of best animated films. And, I don't specifically remember. I remember seeing it when I was a kid. And I remember seeing it probably when I was an adult. But it didn't stick out to me as... I mean, I guess maybe that story is just in the lexicon of my memories, And so it's not, maybe I need to watch it again because nothing pops as special for me for that one.
To me, for a lot of these older animated movies, I mean, pretty much anything before, 1980, I guess, it's all based around the music.
Right.
To me, like those are the things that I can identify with a little bit easier. Like if I hear a song a couple times, like I at least can identify it, recognize it, and know what it's from. Whereas, I'm not going to be quoting lines from Robin Hood. I'm just not. But if you start talking about specific characters or even certain scenes you notice. And there's a couple of interesting subjects in those movies because like the snake gets drunk in
Yeah.
Robin Hood.
Yeah.
So you deal with,
And
it's not alcoholism, but you deal with what alcohol does to things.
yeah,
Or
and there's that
people or whatever.
trippy, surreal, psychedelic thing in Dumbo.
Dumbo.
Yeah.
Or in Peter Pan, or not Peter Pan, in Pinocchio, the land, where the kid turns into a donkey. It's like
Oh yeah.
the crazy land where all the kids go and everybody's having fun
yeah.
until that dumb kid turns into a donkey.
Well, and then the two sidekick characters who are kind of vicious in Pinocchio too. It's like a fox or something. What are the two side characters? I can't think of it. It's definitely There's something I can't remember who they are right now. But Disney always has this kind of darkness. You know,
Yeah.
they kill all the mothers. The mothers are always dead
Yeah.
or dying. Look
Bambi.
at Bambi's horrible, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'd let my kid watch that until I understood whether or not they could handle it because it's pretty severe.
Yeah, and it starts right off the bat.
Yeah, it's horrible. In a fire, it's terrible. It's terrible. But Thumper pretty much saves that movie, so I'm good. I'm good with it. Once Thumper comes around, I'm good.
Yeah.
So I think Disney, of course, they're the innovators and they're the start. And I think, isn't Fantasia one of the first non-verbal movies that was animated? It's all music. There's no words.
There's
in
an
it.
announcer.
Oh yeah, that's true.
There's
That's
an
true.
announcer who kind of announces the beginnings of pieces and stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
But you're right. The scenes themselves, the interstitial, or not interstitials, but the vignettes themselves. Yeah, I don't think they had. There was no like voiceover on top of.
I think that's pretty brave.
That, yeah.
You know, it's pretty inventive and it's pretty brave to take the chance and take the risk. And people love that movie.
Yeah, and I was reading up a little bit about that, about Fantasia this week, and they lost a lot of money in foreign box office because they couldn't get the film to Europe because it came out in 1940.
Oh, yeah.
Which is pretty much the middle of Europe's World War II. I mean, we weren't in World War II yet, but I mean, Europe was hot and heavy into World War II. So they lost. I don't want to say they lost money on it because they definitely haven't lost money by now. They even came out with it again in like 2000, I think.
Yeah.
Put it out in the theater again.
Yeah.
But I think it did fairly well for what it is. I mean, it's going to be harder to get kids to that movie than it is going to get them to Toy Story 2.
I don't know. I think
It depends.
I think that, a good story and a good, interesting looking film, it doesn't matter.
And some huge, crazy fat hippos and tutus
Yeah.
maybe gets you into the door.
Yeah. I think depending on your age and depending on your suspension of disbelief, I think you're in.
Yeah.
Especially in the theater when it's so large and epic. Yeah. Yeah. Disney is the master. There's no doubt.
Do you know the crazy part about Fantasia is that my wife and I went and saw Nutcracker right around Christmas time, and when because they did the Nutcracker suite in Fantasia, and anytime that one of the movements that was included in Nutcracker Suite and Fantasia came on, that's all I could think of.
Of course.
The alligators
Yeah.
and the big huge hippos.
Well, that says something about the film.
yeah, it does. It's memorable.
Yeah, how it puts it in your memory. Here's something interesting, at least to me. When they finally did a best animated picture Oscar, Disney was not the first to win. Shrek won.
Shrek won. That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah. 2000.
But Shrek was not the first animated movie to win an Academy Award, because I looked into this and
But
Snow White won an Academy Award.
Right, but for what though?
It was for like special achievement.
Yeah.
It was not.
They had weird breakup.
It wasn't the only one.
categories.
It wasn't the only one. Who Framed Roger Rabbit won also for special achievement. And then there was another one here that I wrote down. There were a couple of them. Let's see. Toy Story in 1995.
Right, but not as best animated feature.
They like brought up this. It was kind of like the Lifetime Achievement Award type thing where there's no nominees. It's just like, we're going to give you this award,
Right.
because you did something,
Right.
as opposed to like, we're going to have 5 people and figure out which one gets the award.
Well, there's a whole other night before the Oscars about the scientific and technical.
Technical.
Yeah, so I mean that's where the award started. Actually, I
Okay.
mean not so much, but yeah, that's as important as anything.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. But Disney did win an Academy Award for an animated film. So, I mean, they can put that feather in their cap, I guess. But you're right. Once they started, it was 2000, which wouldn't you say, or 2001, I guess. Wouldn't you say that was pretty late? I mean,
Yeah, it's pretty late. Yeah.
because
Well,
the Academy
because-
was
Yeah.
resisting.
I don't know. Well, a lot of animated films made it to Best Picture nominees. Beauty and the Beast was up
I
against.
thought it was the only one, wasn't it?
No. What do you mean the only one?
The only animated film to ever be nominated for an Academy Award?
What?
Beauty and the Beast.
No. Beauty and the Beast was maybe before
For Best Picture, I guess.
for
yeah.
Best Picture. Maybe before they had the animated picture.
Category.
The animated category.
Yeah.
But yeah, Beauty and the Beast was up against Silence of the Lambs, and I love Silence of the Lambs, but I would have voted for Beauty and the Beast. I
Really?
would have. Yeah, I thought it was a more full formed picture, story wise. Yeah, I
To
loved
me,
it.
that movie just didn't hit me. I mean, it was around that time. It was the Little Mermaid. It was that what I would consider a resurgence of Disney animation. And there's a cool documentary called it's called Waking Sleeping Beauty. And it was made about the Disney animation studios and about that kind of mid 80s era where they'd kind of gone into this like the Black Cauldron and these types of
Yeah.
movies, which I never even really saw. But then they kind of reemerged with Little Mermaid, and then maybe it was just the right time, I guess, where they were able to plug in marketing with it and toys or something. I don't know. I mean, but it seemed like there were a bunch of Little Mermaid things that you could buy because my sister had a bunch of them, and Aladdin comes out, same thing. And then I guess Beauty and the Beast came out before Aladdin, I think.
Yeah, it did.
So you had those three movies that I think of as kind of like.
Well, wait a second. The Lion King
those
wasn't
big-
nominated for Best Picture? Was The Lion
let me
King?
take a look. Yeah, I don't think so, but
So
I'll
Beauty and the
double-check.
Beast is the only nominated
what I
film
read.
for Best Picture until they had because in the long run, Toy Story 3 was nominated for Best Picture and Best Animated Film and won. So Lion King was not nominated.
No.
Computer went down.
Yep. But that's okay. I don't think so because I looked that up specifically and kind of wrote down a couple of things, but we'll check here. The other things that, let's see, what was the other thing I was gonna talk about is that Renaissance. There, the documentary called Waking Sleeping Beauty was really cool because it shows you kind of an insight into, because they shot a lot of, I don't know, 8mm film, or it was probably video camera stuff, I guess, now that I think about it. But it was kind of cool, like seeing how they were trying to reinvigorate the animation side and see what they could do with it. And then from there, they did Pocahontas and Tarzan and all these
Oh, it
other movies.
exploded.
Mm-hmm. It was a big deal too. I mean, they were starting to churn them out.
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and which I never saw.
Yeah, it's dark.
Is it? So it's
Yeah.
another dark one.
Yeah, the whole
the source
bad
material's
guy,
probably
the
dark.
Hades guy. Is that no? That's the other one. Who's the bad guy in Hunchback of Notre Dame? He's really vicious. Yeah, he's
Oh, yeah?
he's not a nice person at all.
Yeah, so Elton John and Tim Rice won a couple of Oscars.
Right.
And
Maybe
they were
that's what-
nominated and won. The score won Hans Zimmer. But they never were nominated.
No, okay.
For an Academy Award.
Yeah,
for
I knew
Best
it won
Picture.
some Oscars, but I wasn't sure what for.
Yeah. So yeah, so we've got that Disney, and right around that time, Pixar
Yeah.
is. I think they were bought by Disney around then too. I don't know. There was a little like Netflix documentary on Pixar that I watched a long, long time ago, but I've forgotten most of that. So Pixar was either on their own or they were bought by Disney. They were a spin-off of ILM, which is the company started by George Lucas for the Star Wars movies.
Industrial Light and
Magic.
Magic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they did Raiders of the Lost Ark and
Okay, I think I
all
know
these other
this. I think that Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the president of Disney at the time, sought out Pixar and said, "I'll give you money to produce a movie as a joint,"
Okay.
but it was going to be released as a Pixar film, not a Disney film.
Oh.
Something like that. And then they did Toy Story, and that it went crazy.
Yeah.
It just because it was fantastic.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine, we were in Pasadena. I lived in California at the time, and he was like, "I'm going to the movies." And I was like, "Okay, I'll go with you. What are you seeing?" He was like, "I want to see this new Toy Story." And I was like, "What?" And
Computer movie?
Yeah, I was like, "What are you talking about?" It was like, "What is this?" And he starts telling me about it, and I was like, "Okay, I don't want to sound like." I don't want to change your mind on what movie you want to see. He was like, just come and try it. And 5 minutes into it, I was like, thank goodness I'm in, man. What is this?
So there was no divider. There was no like hump you had to get over to get into the story.
No.
cool.
As soon as I saw Tom Hanks, as soon as I saw Woody moving, I was like, I'm in, dude.
Cool.
And the way that it was so clear and crisp and the details, and you could see the texture in the bed, and it just, and there was little nuances like Little Bo Peep doing things, because I caught that one immediately. I was like, wait a second. So I started looking for things. Do you know, because they're moving, obviously because they need moving partners. And have you ever seen the realtor sign? It says virtual reality realtors. Yeah, it's clever. Yeah, it's
cool.
clever. And then, I knew that Sid kid when I was growing up. Everybody knew Sid. Everybody knew the guy who took
He
the Barbie
burns his
dolls. Yeah, and
guys. He
put
burns
cigarette
his-
burns in his eyeballs and all that other, and all those freaky toys underneath the bed. They're like the Island of Misfit Toys from
Yeah.
that Christmas special. So I was in. I loved it. I love all three of those films.
Yeah, they are good, and
They're great.
We've even talked about them.
Yeah.
We talked about them in the
trilogy,
trilogy
yeah.
episode. But so that is happening concurrently with the Pocahontas, Hunchback. Starting moving up the Mulan is one that my wife really loves. She likes.
I've never seen it.
It's really an empowering, like it's all of these people in what is it? I can't remember what kind of. It's like a certain dynasty of China or something like that, or Mongolians or something, somewhere in the China Mongolia area, where she plays the daughter of a head head guy of a particular tribe, and she wants to go out and fight with everybody, but she can't because she's a woman, and so she dresses up like a man, and then she's like an awesome warrior, and Eddie Murphy plays a little dragon thingy.
See, I've seen parts of it. I know the storyline, and people talked about it back in the day, but I never watched it. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because you've got that movie, and then you've got The Little Mermaid, which is kind of and we were talking about this earlier this week, my wife and I, about how The Little Mermaid is kind of like it's kind of a down with women type of a movie. It's kind of like, you're not happy being who you are, where you are. You need something else that you don't even know about, and you don't even know that you want it, but you just want it. There's even a whole song in there. She's like, I've got all this stuff, but I want more, is what she's saying. She's like, I want to be where the people are, and I want to do all this other stuff. And it's like, it's saying like, I want to like marry this guy who I don't even know because.
Well, you think that's a down with women thing?
It's kind of. I mean,
I think it's about a person who just is not satisfied with the world they live in. It's like somebody who lives in Kentucky who doesn't want to live in a small town and dreams of going to New York or San Francisco or Chicago, a big city, where I don't think it's down with women.
Well, I've read.
Cynical.
I'm not cynical. I've
No,
just
I didn't say
read,
you
like,
mean our society.
I'm trying to identify with a feminist viewpoint in this situation because I've read articles about that, and I mean there's all kinds of stuff. There's, the Smurfette principle, if you've heard about that. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm trying to, like, take that in, and I'm trying to chew on it and figure out, where I'm at in that. And
See, it doesn't even register for me. So
The
you're
Little Mermaid
saying
specifically?
So you're saying that there's a feminist
They're saying she needs a man to be whole. She needs a man to get legs. She needs a man to be, where she wants to be. She doesn't even know this guy, but she's going to marry him.
Yeah, but okay. I don't see that, but
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, that's a way to look at it, but wow.
Anyway,
I don't know about
take
that.
it or leave it. Yep. So,
Fair enough.
But anyway, so those are happening at the same time. You've got the hand-drawn animation plus the CGI animation, and then it seems like in the 2000s it was more CGI based movies, and they kind of got away from hand-drawn animation for a while. At least Disney did. I mean, there were other movies that were coming out, I guess, too, at the same time. But The good thing, let's talk about this. Let's talk about Pixar versus the hand-drawn animation movies. You've got, I mean, it seemed like, let's just take those three movies, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. I think they all came out like year after year, right?
Lion King's in there somewhere.
And Lion King was after those three. So Lion King after that. Let's take those four then. They came out 1, 2, 3, 4, and with the Pixar movies, since they take so much longer, I know they were staggered, but do you think that the stories were able to be massaged more, or do you think they spent more time? Do you think it was time that helped those movies, or do you think it was the people who were directing and writing those movies that helped them?
It comes down to story for me. All of those films you just mentioned have a great narrative, and it comes down to story. If the story's not there, I don't care how cool it looks or if it's hand drawn or if it's computer generated, because the concern at first was that people were not going to buy into the computer generated looking animation, that they were worried about. So they made a lot of effort to make things look real. So things that were supposed to be shiny were shiny. Things that were supposed to look like plastic. And I don't know if you can get that in a hand-drawn animation. So you trade one for the other. But short and sweet, all those stories are great stories. All of them. Whether or not you want to read in some feminist manifesto, which I'm going to think about that all night long, because I just don't see it.
You should look. There's a couple articles about that.
You know, now that you say that, I'm starting to see it, but I don't know.
My initial reaction
seems a little too deep of a subject matter. I mean, I get it. Maybe I'm not. Maybe
we're coming at it from a male point of view too.
I was just going to say I have no idea. You know, when I grow my uterus, I'll let you know what my opinion is. Okay. But anyway, but it comes down to story. The reason why I think The Lion King works is because it's a coming of age story. It's about a young person who didn't know that he was supposed to be king, and but he's always felt this urge to rise above his circumstances, which is a theme in most Disney films. With an evil uncle who's, done horrible things to their family. And it's about, cliche as it is, the circle of life. And I get that. I saw that on Broadway, by the way. Fantastic. If you ever want to see a great musical on stage, see The Lion King.
We did see it. We saw it in Las Vegas, but not on
mind-blowing
Broadway. But
how
it was the Julie Taymor.
Yeah. Yeah, I kept saying, well, how are they going to do this? How are they going to do the Stampede? And then they would do it. And I was like, how are they going to do the Mufasa in the sky at night? And then they did that. And all the animals.
And the hyenas and all that.
Crazy great. Crazy.
Your
suspension of disbelief is so messed with for that, because they're puppets, but at the same time, they're human.
People.
Yeah, and the people are speaking, but the puppet's acting it. So you're like, whoa. So that's a great story. Aladdin's a great story.
So hold on, let's go back to Lion King. That's Hamlet, right?
People say that.
I mean, it's got elements of Hamlet.
Yeah. Well, Hamlet is about a young prince, Hamlet, whose father was murdered by his brother, Hamlet's uncle. Then Hamlet's uncle marries
what's her name?
Not Ophelia. Oh no, geez, Louise! If you had not asked me, I would have been able to
shouldn't
say.
have
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's not your fault. Claudius, Hamlet. Oh my, Gertrude.
Okay, there we go. Pulled it out.
I think the lady doth protest too much. That's her line. That's so huge. But yeah, so it's about a father who's murdered by his brother, and the brother, Hamlet's uncle, marries his mother. So sort of similar, because
starts off that way.
Yeah, Scar's kills Mufasa, or puts him in harm's way to get killed, harm's way. And so yeah, I guess that's Hamlet but he never marries the mother, but he wants to become the king. But yet the prince is standing in his way. So yeah, I suppose it's
similar.
And you could say that, what's his name, are the two sidekick characters,
Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah, could be Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Yeah, so sure. Why not?
Cool.
I mean, if you're going to base anything on a story that can be told over and over again in a different way, then yeah, choose Hamlet. There's a reason why it's existed for the length of time that it has.
Definitely. All right. Well, so we talked about Disney. I mean, once Disney and Pixar start making these movies, you start getting other players into the mix in these newer animated movies, newer computer animated movies. You got DreamWorks, which had did Shrek, and then more recently How to Train Your Dragon, which I thought was
Haven't seen
really
it.
awesome.
I keep hearing about it though.
That movie, I saw it in IMAX, and it was really cool.
Oh, sorry. Didn't part 2 isn't that nominated for best
It is
animated picture this year?
It is nominated. Yeah,
I heard it's
I didn't
great.
see part 2 yet, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, not to just go right back to Disney, but interesting is the fact that you were talking about computer world versus hand-drawn world, and yet they just had this huge, massive hit with Frozen, and that's hand-drawn. So
Well, they moved back. They also did Tangled, which was a
Yeah,
good one, and
huge
then
hit.
Princess and the Frog, which I did not see.
Yeah.
But it sounds interesting. It's set in New Orleans, which is a whole nother. I mean, you've got a built-in kind of world right there.
well, you got flavor,
you
for
got
lack of a better
swamp,
term.
and
yeah.
you got all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
going on there. So
Yeah, and I believe she's the first African-American princess.
Princess, yep.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
All right.
it's interesting how they flip back and forth, but
Well, I think but it's not hand drawn. It's all computer generated, but it's 2-dimensional.
right. Okay, there you go.
But because they've figured out a good way of doing.
Well, they haven't. Once again, it comes down to story. So the kids didn't get used to, or people didn't get used to the computer-generated animation, and now they can't accept two-dimensional. As long as the story's there, I'm in.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about stop motion animation.
Okay.
Have you seen many feature-length movies that are stop motion?
Well, Fantastic Mr. Fox is on my list. Yeah, yeah.
That's
And then, of
awesome.
course, you have all of Tim Burton stuff, which I thought Corpse Bride was more interesting than The Nightmare Before Christmas, which everybody thinks I'm crazy because I say that. But yeah, I've seen a lot of.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, you've
I
never
haven't
seen
seen any of them.
Really?
None of them.
Any particular reason why?
I haven't seen any of the Tim Burton ones. So I don't know why. I've never.
Well, you can't see everything.
Yeah, so I did see. So Henry Selick is a guy who worked with Tim Burton on Nightmare Before Christmas, and he went on to do Coraline, which I did see,
I have not.
and that was a good movie.
I'll bet. I've heard
It was
a lot
really
about it.
good movie, and I don't think he's done any. He's not directed any movies since then. I don't think, but I liked it, and so I don't know why I'm not going back, and maybe it's just I'm seeing other movies, but I do want to see
Amongst the thousands we've talked about that we have seen.
Yeah, I do want to see
Kind of have
Frank
to
and
give
Weenie.
ourselves a break about that.
Yeah, I do want to see Frank and Weenie, and I want to see
Yeah, me too.
the other. I mean, how many has he done? Corpse Bride, Frank and Weenie, and I think
There's something in between there too,
Okay.
isn't there? But he has a
maybe.
sensibility. He has a style. He has a. I don't even know if style's the right word for it, but he has a thumbprint that is indistinguishably Tim Burton. You know, he likes all those curly Q looking things and all the striped looking things. And so his sensibility I like. The thing about Nightmare Before Christmas is it's a bit confusing to me because I'm like, is it a Halloween movie? Is it a Christmas movie? Wait, it's both. And I think that's great, but it didn't fully work for me like Corpse Bride did. I thought that concept was excellent. You know, it was like this person accidentally marries this corpse from the depths of a grave and has to deal with it, you know, and her arms fall off and stuff like that. It's crazy.
Oh, okay.
It's an it's not a one note idea. It goes into a bunch of different dimensions. So,
It looks like they both did James and the Giant Peach. Did
oh
you
yeah, I
see that?
love that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
Oh, good.
That's based on a book though.
It's based
yeah.
on a Roald Dahl book.
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
read that book, but I never. Yeah,
That makes
I never saw
sense.
the movie,
Yeah,
but-
it's good.
So it looks like those are the only ones that Corpse Bride, Frank and Weenie, James and the Giant Peach, and the Nightmare Before Christmas. Those are the ones that Tim Burton has been. And Henry Selick also did James and the Giant Peach. He directed it, and Tim Burton produced it. So
Makes sense. Not
so-
a stinker in the bunch.
yeah, no, that's cool. And then I've seen a couple. Did you see Chicken Run? That was the Wallace and
Yeah.
Gromit guys.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, those are fun movies, and I like that. I mean, there's something about stop motion animation that it's kind of like makes you feel good because you're not. Okay, so people sitting at a computer doing animation is hard work, and I appreciate it, and I think it's awesome. But then at the same time, it's kind of cool that there's a guy or a girl who's sitting there and moving an arm and then clicking a button to take another picture and then moving an arm and an eyebrow and a leg.
Can't imagine.
I could not do it, but it's so cool. And seeing have you seen time lapses
Yeah,
of
I
people
love that. Yeah.
doing that? There's a movie that just came out, Box Trolls, and there's a video going around YouTube and all the Twitter and all that stuff of they take a zoomed out version of a scene in Box Trolls and they show in a translucent form, so it's not transparent. If it was transparent you couldn't see the person, and it's not opaque in that the person's in the way, but they show this kind of see-through person during this whole scene and what they had to go through kind of in fast motion to move things around.
I've seen something like that. Maybe not this particular thing, but I've seen the making of those.
Yeah, exactly. And so Fantastic Mr. Fox, the DVD has a really cool making of where they kind of show you how they do it too. But still, I mean, just seeing people getting out there and doing that kind of stuff, it's neat, and it makes me appreciate it that much more, when I see it.
Well, all those films that you've just mentioned, they have great stories, so that's there. But maybe it's a subconscious reaction to it, but you can kind of tell that effort is made when you're watching it. There's a reaction you have to it, and maybe you do on some level appreciate it deeper because you know that elbow's being moved, that foot's being moved, that eyebrow's being moved 1,000 times to just get them to smile.
And there's 1,000 choices that were made.
Absolutely.
I mean, 1,000 times however many. So every frame choices were made.
Absolutely.
Multiple choices were made.
Well, I grew up on the Rankin and Bass films with The Year Without a Santa Claus and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Those are all stop animation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But when I was a kid, you have no perspective of it. You think they're little miniature things. They're about 2 feet tall.
Oh,
They're
I
not,
didn't know that.
Yeah, they're not maybe that big, but they're fairly big.
Huh.
So they look. When you see them in real life, you're like, oh my God, they're huge. You think they're little because that's the way it looks on TV.
Uh-huh.
But to this day, I don't think there's any better Christmas specials. I mean, there've been a lot of Christmas movies that have come out, but there's a reason why kids even nowadays
will identify.
Yeah, and watch them over and even in October, even in June. My nieces and nephews like, put The Year Without a Santa Claus on. I'm like, it's July. They're like, but it's great. And I'm like, I'm in. So I think the stop animation is you can't go wrong with the two-dimensional drawings. You can't go wrong with the computer generation, but for whatever reason, that stop motion just adds something to it.
It is. It adds a flavor that you're right.
It adds a style that no matter what the world is, it has a distinct look to it.
And maybe it's realism, maybe that.
Yeah.
It's a physical thing that takes a physical space in our real world, and it's being portrayed on screen as opposed to a simulation of a three-dimensional space, which is what Toy Story and all these other movies are. And then you take that and juxtapose that to a two-dimensional space with shadows and things like that, which is what, Robin Hood and Jungle Book and all those are, which are still engaging from a story standpoint and fun and interesting and great for kids and great for adults. But
I don't have the patience to even conceptually want to work on something like that.
I would totally screw it up. Mine arms would be going all over the place. I'd get pictures out of order.
I guess that's the difference between looking at a two-dimensional picture or poster versus a shadow box.
Like a diorama type.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are always because speaking of shadows, the shadow cuts across it in a certain way and gives it depth and texture that you don't have in a flat picture. Mm-hmm. You can go see a piece of art in a museum and still love it, but there's something about when things are in forced perspective or the hand is reaching out from a shadow box or whatever the character's doing in the shadow box, especially the black and white ones where it's just like cut out black and white, almost construction paper looking, and then it's layered, so it's three-dimensional. There's something about that. That's probably what stop animation pulls out in your mind,
Yeah, well, and that's true. And even the best computer programs nowadays, I mean, there's things that we're using even at our television station. We've got a guy who all he does is animations at our TV station, and he uses things 4D Studio, I think is what Studio 4D is what it's called, and you can do things like have a 3-dimensional space, and you can put a light somewhere, and you can tell that light what color temperature to be and what intensity to be, and it will light that 3-dimensional space in the proper way that a real light would light a real room.
That's crazy cool.
It is crazy cool, but at the same time, it's like we're going back to, it's not the same as putting a light in a real studio. I mean, or, a miniature light in a miniature, studio.
True 6 of 1 for me.
It's
I find it fascinating that a computer program can figure out how
that's amazing.
the
Yeah.
shadow goes across somebody's nose versus, a real life person can put it into
Look
real
at Benjamin Button.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
I mean, that seems to be kind of like the amalgamation of all these things we're talking about. I mean, not stop motion, but what it is it's a mixture of the real world and what computers can do. And I was not taken out of that movie.
Not for a split second.
Yeah. And
It's
so,
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a technical marvel, man.
See?
It really is.
Animated movies, David Fincher.
There you
Boom.
go.
I got him in.
There you go.
I got my quota.
There you go.
All right. So, did you watch many of these dark animated movies? It seemed like they all came out in the 80s.
What is that?
Secret of Nim,
No.
Black Cauldron.
Yes.
American Tail I saw, and to me that seems like a dark movie.
I barely remember
Thinking
it, though.
about it.
I barely remember
I haven't
it.
seen it in probably 25 years, but
All the mouse things start to melt into one for me.
Yeah.
I can't distinguish
there's a
them.
lot of mouse movies.
There really are.
Rescuers,
Yeah.
Rescuers Down Under.
See that I'm out because I can't remember anything distinguishing between the two.
Okay.
I mean, I do. Wasn't there a box and a plane or something? I don't remember.
There's a plane in the second one, or
Yeah.
there was an albatross that they
Yeah,
flew on
okay.
in the second one. It wasn't a plane. It was
Yeah, well, it's okay. I just said I don't really remember them.
no. But yeah, I mean, it's those types of movies that I just think back and I think of like just bad news. Like just, there was a Lord of the Rings animated thing that looked really scary. I never saw it.
With Ralph Bakshi or whatever it is, where
I
he
think so.
he did the real life stuff and then animated over top of it. Yeah, it's the first book and part of the second book added together. And yeah, and it's actually, you can see where Peter Jackson sort of developed his style based on it too, because all that
Yeah,
had-
Ralph Bakshi.
yeah. There were interesting late night films when I was growing up in a theater called the Narrow, which is sort of a dollar theater, if you will. But I don't think it was only $1 at the time. But they would show these late night, midnight movies, and they would show that, and they would show heavy metal, which is definitely an adult.
That's an adult one. I've
Yeah.
not seen it, but I've
Yeah,
heard
it's good. It's interesting. But they would always show, that's where I saw the David Lynch films and all the strange.
Cool in the theater too.
Oh yeah,
That's great.
The Hunger, they played that a lot.
cool.
Yeah. There was a lot of different things that they played on a regular basis, and they would reoccur. The Who's Quadrophenia,
Mm-hmm.
which I love. But yeah, I saw that Lord of the Rings. I didn't really understand it back then because I wasn't really a fan of. I didn't read the book. I hadn't read the book at that point. So yeah, it's really well done. And when you watch it now, you think, wow, they ripped off Peter Jackson. When the opposite is not ripped off, but he definitely borrowed from the style. You can see
Oh,
where he was
cool.
influenced by it. Definitely.
Interesting. So those all seem to me to be kind of like maybe not good kids.
I'm gonna steal
Movies.
it. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna see it.
I don't know. And maybe I'm sure there was either a reason why my parents didn't let me / show me these movies. Let me watch them / show me them. Maybe, or I don't know. I mean, I didn't feel like they necessarily shielded me from a lot of stuff. I mean, I watched Top Gun 24/7 for like a year.
Right.
So it's not like, I mean, it's not like they were against me seeing, anything other than, kids movies. But so I don't know. There's, and I can't speak intelligently about them because I've kind of been shielded from them. But they're kind of like in the corner of my brain. They have this kind of like, lore to them of like, these are bad, bad movies. Not
You
bad
should
movies,
spend a
but-
weekend watching.
I don't know.
Yeah, you should.
Scary.
Well, you know what? I think the theme of the show so far is that animation is not just a childhood thing. It's not just
Yeah.
for kids. because the ones that we've pointed out not only have adult themes in them, but some of them are not for children. They just aren't. I
Yeah.
don't think the Lord of the Rings will bother you that much. It's a little off-putting the way that he does that real life animation thing where he filmed real people and then animated over top of it.
Oh, really?
There's sequences. I think all the orcs are done that way. I think everybody else is animated. All of Frodo and Gandalf and all of them are animated. But yeah, I think that you'll find it fascinating because of that one reason that I just pointed out, that Peter Jackson definitely imitation
Looked
is the
at
highest
that.
form of our flattery. Yeah.
Okay.
So he did. So I dare you to watch this for the weekend.
Great.
I double dog dare you.
Great. So speaking of the using real, like shooting people and then using that as a basis for animation, have you seen either Waking Life or A Scanner Darkly?
Yeah. Isn't Scanner Darkly Richard Linklater?
Both of them are.
Okay. What's the first one about?
I haven't seen Waking Life, but I think it's more of like a different scenes put together that has kind of a through line of a person trying to kind of explore
And
their
Scanner
purpose.
Darkly has Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves, Woody Harrelson, and Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, it doesn't click for me. There's something about it. I've seen it, and I remember having to force myself to watch it.
Yeah, and I was more interested in the rotoscoping, which is how they did the animation. They shot real,
Yeah.
using a real video camera, and then they did this animation technique called rotoscoping, where it's very
Ralph Bakshi, whatever his name is.
Bakshi?
Bakshi, yeah. He did that too.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then that sounds interesting to me to see how it was like back in 1978 when that came out versus whenever Scanner Darkly came out, early 2000s, I think. But
Here's the thing, that the concept and the reason why he was doing that didn't make sense for me for the storytelling purpose. Like it didn't add to it.
so it was like an added
it was
flavor,
distracting
not
to me.
necessary.
I didn't see why it was added to it. I don't understand the concept. Maybe there's just some things I just don't understand. His disposition is a bit. What are you laughing at?
No, because just because of Boyhood and
Well, Dazed and Confused has a very strange sensibility to it.
I don't
Also,
know. I loved it.
I did too, but it's
I feel like
definitely-
you can live in that world, in the Dazed and Confused world. Like you could just slip right in.
Yeah, you could, but it's got its off-putting feelings about it. You know, the kind of nerdy kids who are trying to be popular going to that party and they don't really fit in, and they just
But I totally identify with
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Well, the awkwardness of that time frame and the age, and maybe if you lived closer to that time frame, you would be like, nope, I'm not into that, because that world is very much like how it was. So I don't know, and I guess this is a compliment because it's off-putting to me. His worlds are they're just a little
Askew.
shaky. Yeah, skewed is a good word. Yeah.
Okay. So those are the only movies that I could think about that used the rotoscoping like that,
They're
but
the prominent ones.
Yeah, I can't really think of anybody else that used it at least for the whole movie. Have you seen Persepolis?
No, I've heard about it though.
It's a pretty cool movie. It's a young Iranian girl right at the time when the Iranian Revolution happened, late 70s, early 80s, when the fundamentalist Islamic leaders took over Iran, and so kids who could run around, little girls who could run around in jeans and a t-shirt now have to wear full on burqa and
So I take it this isn't the Saturday matinee movie you want to take your kids to?
No, we're strictly in the grown-up movie category right now.
Was it not nominated or won the
It
Oscar?
was nominated
Yeah.
for the Oscar.
Yeah.
I don't think it won though.
Okay.
But
Sounds interesting.
yeah, and they use a good. The trailer was great, and that got me to watch the movie. But they use American music in the trailer specifically, and then there's some scenes where I think she's singing like "Eye of the Tiger." She's like walking down the street, and, like gonna fight people or something. I mean, it's kind of cool because
That's
she's
neat.
like not putting up with anything, and it had to be a really trying time, for anybody in that situation to kind of like flip a switch. I mean, it was much harder for a girl her age at that time than people who, kids who were born after that time who that's all they've ever
Yeah,
known.
that's all they knew, yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't imagine. And then have you seen any Hayao Miyazaki films?
No.
Have you heard of Princess Mononoke or Spirited Away? That was nominated for.
Yeah.
I think that won.
That did win.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't. And I've seen part of Spirited Away, but I've not seen it from beginning, middle, and end.
I haven't
and
seen
I know
any
it
either.
calls to me every time I see something about it. I think I saw it on one of the lists when I was looking up, researching this topic, and I keep going, oh, I gotta see that. There's something about it. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen any of his movies,
Yeah.
and I feel like there's a new one that came out last year, and I can't remember what it's called. I'll have to look it up here. I think it had a couple of different names in different countries, but I'll have to look it up. But he has, that's early works. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for new stuff. The Wind Rises. So
I think I've heard of that.
yeah, and then From Up on Poppy Hill was a couple of years before that. I mean, there's a couple of. I think the bigger ones are Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, and then Princess Mononoke. So those are the three kind of really big ones. He's been making movies since the late 70s. I mean, this
Crazy.
guy he's kind of gone up and down as far as like his being prolific. Prolificness? Not
Sure.
a word.
Don't ask me. You're
So,
asking the wrong person. I have my own language sometimes. People are like, what? Well, here's what we should challenge ourselves to do.
Uh-huh.
We should watch 2 of those ones that scare you and 2 of these right here and do a whole show on those 4 animated.
Okay.
Maybe like 6 episodes from now or something
Sure,
like
yeah.
that. But we just spent 15 minutes talking about a bunch of films we have not seen.
That's true.
So we should now challenge ourselves to say we need to see these films. So
But they definitely
I challenge
come.
you.
Thank you. I accept the challenge, and I challenge you.
Accept it.
And so they definitely come to the top, like you were talking about Spirited Away, those types of things. They come to the top of the list multiple times. So we didn't talk about Roger Rabbit either. I mean, I loved that movie when I was younger.
I loved it too.
Okay,
I loved it.
Christopher
I went
Lloyd?
around imitating Roger Rabbit
Yeah.
forever. And people would be like, stop doing that. It's a terrible imitation, first of all. But I couldn't get the whole, please, Jessica, I'm not going to do it. But yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was
really well
great.
done.
It was. And from a technical standpoint, I mean, so only somebody like, I don't want to say that. Robert Zemeckis was the perfect choice for this movie because I feel like he had the patience and he had the wherewithal because he'd already dealt with complex time situations in the Back to the Future series.
Right.
He's coming right off the Back to the Future series, and this was his next movie. I believe it was his next movie because it took him a couple years, I think, to make. And crazy choice of Bob Hoskins.
Perfect.
Where did that come from? And
Because
who-
he's brilliant.
he's great, but I just don't know where
yeah, you
that came
you
from.
don't think of him as your lead detective in a film.
No.
Yeah, which makes it perfect.
Yeah, and then Christopher Lloyd too. I mean, I didn't know that he could do that.
Scary.
I did
He's
not know.
scary.
And the other crazy part about Christopher Lloyd is I don't know where he stopped and where like animation began in his performance. I mean, you can see, but where that he does that weird cackly voice
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And like I don't think he did it, but in the moment you're like I'm totally believing that this is happening. So yeah, it was
It
really
came
cool.
from somebody's imagination, so it had to have been thought of.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of whether or not he did it or it was manipulated or it was a sound effect, it doesn't matter. It came from somebody's idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's great.
I also loved Warner Brothers and Disney in the same space for however many seconds they were.
Yeah,
But
that's awesome.
they were.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
It's like when they do those crossover comics when Marvel meets DC and
Yeah.
Spider-Man's in Batman's world and so forth and so on. It's
Yeah.
like, wait, what?
there's something like that happens in Lego Movie, and you'll see
Oh,
it.
okay,
It's pretty
cool.
cool.
Okay.
But yeah, have you seen Wreck-It Ralph?
Yeah, that's on my list.
Cool.
Yeah, we actually have talked about this before we even started the podcast, I
Because
think.
I just saw it this year.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me
Cool.
too. I thought it was great. We have talked about this because we talked about how it was neat that the lead character was something that he wasn't expected to be.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thought he was one way, but he was another way. And then the glitch, Sarah Silverman's character,
Mm-hmm.
she was something else than what you're expecting her to be. It was all sort of like don't judge a book by its cover because you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
And the thing I love about that movie and about the Lego Movie too, I won't get too far into it, but is that they're fully formed worlds and they have their rules and they stick to those
Yeah.
rules, and there's no way around those rules, and everything the story falls within this structure. It feels like there's a structure there, and then the story is created within that structure, as opposed to the story is there and then they make up a world around it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I love that because it's like they did their homework initially to make a fully formed world that other things could be going on at the same time. It's not like this world is here just for this story.
Well, when they're pounding out the story and the story starts to go in one direction, you can only go so far because you had the rules of the world
Yep.
to hold you in. So there was no way you can go past that boundary. If you did, then it wouldn't fit into the boundaries of that story. So that's
Yep.
having a confining world, for lack of a better term, always makes it interesting for me. So yeah, I thought it was great.
Definitely. So, all right, am I missing anything? What about
Well-
you? What are your lists?
Well,
You haven't said
I have a
much about your
couple
list.
that when I was doing, well, I have Fantastic Mr. Fox, I have The Incredibles, I have
Oh, The Incredibles, yeah.
I have the Toy Story trilogy, Finding Nemo, Wreck-It Ralph, A Bug's Life.
Yeah.
I love A Bug's Life.
Uh-huh.
Why do I always have to play the stick? Because you look like a stick. I love that.
A Bug's Life was one of those like the beginnings of that movie, and then Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Those two movies kind of get you into this like. Of course, that blade of grass would be that big. You know, like you don't think about it.
Yeah.
But then once you're confronted with the reality of being in that world, you're like, of course, yes, that's gonna be that large. You know, that's gonna be that you're gonna be within this. And I just loved how they did. You know, you go to the bar and you get a droplet.
Yeah, that was that's so great. In a little round leaf, he put a droplet in to make a telescope. Yeah, that's great.
All of those little things.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's the other thing that they have with these, with the Bug's Life. If you told somebody to go away in a week and write a script, they would not come up with all that stuff. But since they have 3 years,
Right.
since they have to have 3 years to make all this stuff. I mean, especially back then, if you did a scene. Like, not even a scene. If you did I don't know, a second or 5 seconds worth of animation, let's say that's all you did for the whole day, it would take it more than 24 hours to render that, like to create that animated scene that you could watch in real time in a computer. And well, they didn't even use one computer. They used like farms of computers, like buildings of computers.
Mind-blowing.
And so you could work all day, and then you stop at night, and then you go to render that and then you may have a bad render, and so the next morning you can't even see what you did all day yesterday.
That's crazy.
It's stuff like that they have to run into, and that's why it took them, it was taking them 3 years to do these movies. But you have 3 years to do this movie. If you can add in something that's like, oh, what would be cool is if he took a droplet and put it in a rolled up leaf. But that's not going to happen if you only have, a set, small chunk of time to write something. But as you move along in the process of the movie, you can get that cool little,
Well,
stuff
I think
in there.
they add to each other. Well, we need for him to look across this valley. How would he do that in that world? Well, what would reflect
There's
light?
not gonna be a miniature
Yeah,
telescope.
there's not going to. It would not be. So they used logical things. So that makes sense. So we talked about Beauty and the Beast, and then I started to once I saw the list of Monsters Incorporated. It's on my
Yes.
list too. I love that movie. That is the movie that was nominated for Best Picture for the first year of Best Animated Feature Film, and Shrek won. With all due respect to Shrek, I thought it was great, but I thought it was topical. I thought it made too many references to our world. Monsters Incorporated was as great as any Disney animated film was. It didn't rely on topical jokes and the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost irreverent thing that Shrek relied on. It was a great Disney movie. So, and I love Billy Crystal and John Goodman in that.
Yeah.
And the little girl is so cute, Boo. And everything. Once again, it's all based on this one idea, And her name is Boo because she scares everybody. It's cute, and she thinks he's a big cat, so she's a kitty. Yeah, love it.
But so that movie doesn't talk down to its
Never.
to its audience. Also, it allows Billy Crystal to be Billy Crystal, and his tone, and I mean, you can hear, City Slickers jokes in there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's not that he actually made those, but it's his tone in a lot of these other movies that you've seen him in situations you've seen him in. You still see him. He's got a lot of Billy Crystalness in the movie, and it's not like you're trying. They did the same thing in Aladdin. They allowed Robin
yeah, but
Williams
I think
to be
there's
Robin
a difference,
Williams,
though. I think in Aladdin, they allowed Robin Williams
to run away with it.
almost to a fault,
Mm-hmm.
to where it was too Robin Williams run away.
Mm-hmm.
This with Scully from Monsters Inc., it was always in the midst of the character.
Oh,
It
you
was-
mean Mike Wazowski?
Yeah. Right. What did I say? Scully?
Scully,
Yeah.
that's okay.
What did I say? Where did that come from?
Sully is
Sully.
the big one. That's
Right.
John Goodman.
Okay.
Yeah.
She keeps repeating his name, doesn't she?
She says Mike Wazowski.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. But everything he does, every shtick he does is in line with what the character would do. The Aladdin kind of it goes off a little bit, and they did allow him to do whatever he wanted to do. But so I don't know, something about Monsters Inc. was interesting on a different level. So I had all those on there. Up is on my list too. Did you ever see Up?
I did see Up.
Yeah,
I
it's-
saw it in 3D. And the first, it's like what everybody says, the first 20 minutes is, or not even 20 minutes, the first 10 minutes
Fantastic.
and it's the closest I've come to crying at a
Aw.
Disney movie because it's really sad. You don't even really know these people, but they do feel like you've kind of been through
Yeah.
life with them.
There's a
And-
resonance to true love that
And the great part about that is there's no dialogue. I mean,
Yeah.
in that part. I mean, at the very beginning, I think there's a little bit, but where they're little kids. But
Yeah.
then once it starts getting into them growing up together and growing old together, then it's the way that they do that is very effective.
Yeah, well, won the Oscar for best animated feature film, I believe. But anyway, after I started looking at everybody's list, I started to remember things that I was like, wait, I used to love that when I was a kid, and I haven't thought about it in years. Do you ever see Watership Down?
That's another one.
Okay, you got to watch it. That's on the top of the list. It's fantastic. It's hard.
It's animals in peril.
It is
which
rough.
I'm not a
And you
fan
know
of.
what? And fair enough. Okay, I take it back. You don't have to watch that one because I started to think about it, and it's violent.
Like Rivers of Blood, I think pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much sums it up. Flesh and blood.
Okay, great.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, it's very well done, and I remember going and seeing it once again at the movie theater, the Narrow, and I thought, oh, it's an animated film. I'm gonna have a great time tonight. And in the first 15, 20 minutes, you're like, oh yeah, happy little rabbit world. And all of a sudden you see the sign of the people coming in to do this construction in this, I can't remember the name of the place where they're at. The Warren, I believe is what it's called. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, what's going on here? And then it just breaks loose. And it's like a war picture, basically. Well, anyway, it's a very interesting film. And then I remembered when I was a kid, Ricky Tikki Tavi. Did you ever see
Now, was that a mongoose?
Yeah, and
okay,
a snake.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. It's one of those ones that I don't know why it's so fascinating, but it's based on a book. It just captivated me when I was a kid. And then I remembered The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Did you ever see that anime?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Ichabod Crane.
Yeah.
First thing I think about is him like putting a bunch of salt on a boiled egg.
Yeah.
He just hears something and he keeps pouring salt on this egg and it's got a pile of salt.
Yeah.
And then he eats it.
Yeah. Well, it's only half an hour long, and it's probably the most concise storytelling that you can have. I mean, it's near perfect because he's great. The whole bumbling idiot part about it is
There's
great.
not a lot of dialogue in there either.
No,
is
not
there?
really.
So it's like Bing Crosby does the voiceover, I think. Oh, I've got to look this up now. Yeah, I think Bing Crosby does the voiceover of.
Interesting. Well, I went to very strict Catholic school growing up, private Catholic school, and they used to
Yep.
show that. Is it him?
Yeah, Bing Crosby does the voiceover.
Great. That's great. Yeah, you can kind of hear it now. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
But they would show that to us every Halloween, and I think back on that, and I think that's not a very happy-go-lucky story. It ends very strangely in almost a mysterious way. That horseman is the most frightening character in cartoon land ever. And the whole light-up pumpkin, fiery pumpkin, to this day I want to torch a pumpkin just so I can see that look, because it's fascinating. So yeah, I started thinking about all these movies that don't naturally come to mind when you think about animated, because we've had A Bug's Life and Beauty and the Beast and all these films that have inundated our imaginations for the last 25 years, but there's a whole thing before it that these films fit into. So if I was to say see anything off that list, I would say if you haven't seen The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, see that. Show it to your kids when they're at an appropriate age. I mean, not too young, because it's
a little spooky.
It is spooky.
Yeah.
That's a good word for it. And then if you got enough in you, see Watership Down, because it's not for the faint at heart, but it's very well done.
All right. All right. I think that we've exhausted this topic, possibly. Maybe not. I'm sure. We didn't talk about Mary Poppins, and I watched Saving Mr. Bank last night. So,
Did you?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
It was okay. I kind of got a little annoyed with Emma Thompson, even though she does a really good job. I felt like she was doing what she was supposed to do, and I felt like there wasn't necessarily a wrong note with her performance, but the whole time, I didn't like the intercutting as much, because it intercuts a lot between the present story and the throwback story or whatever.
I didn't get it.
And in it, there's a lot of just what's the word? It's something bad's gonna happen. I can't remember what the word is for that, but yeah, I knew that there were terrible
Foreboding?
things. Foreboding, yeah. It was just very, foreboding, and there were terrible things on the horizon, and I was just like, get to the part where it's bad, please, because
Get it over with.
I want to move on. So,
Yeah,
but
I
did like, you know what? I loved B.J. Novak and Jason Schwartzman. They were amazing, and Tom Hanks's accent was all over the place. But
Well,
other than
and
that,
he doesn't look anything like it.
I don't care.
Yeah, that bothered me though.
But see, I watched a little bit of that Walt Disney Presents where he comes on TV and explains things before the show starts. But I didn't have. I mean, I am more recognize his voice than I do his likeness. So, it didn't bother me as much. But yeah, and then you see her all the time in commercials. But the woman who played the secretary, not the older secretary, but the younger secretary, she's in a bunch of commercials. If you watch, she's been in dog food commercials and all these different kinds of commercials. So
Yeah, I can't place
she
her.
had kind of like the bob
I
haircut
can't place her though.
type of a thing. But anyway, I recognized her. It's like, oh, good for her. She's in a full length feature length movie. That's great.
Yeah, but it got overlooked for all of the awards, and then I finally saw it, and I was like, you know what? I don't think I would have had any kind of. This should have been nominated for this, or she got shut out, or he should have been nominated. None of that came to mind when I saw it. But I find it interesting that we're ending with a featured film about the real life Walt Disney
That's right. That has no animation in
that
it.
has no animation in it in our animation show.
That's not true. There's a clip of the hybrid animation with Dick Van Dyke and the penguins dancing at the very end.
That's true. That's true.
Speaking of that, we didn't talk about that. That happened a couple of times. That happened a little bit in Fantasia. It happened just like a little bitty Mickey Mouse going to a podium where there's real people at the orchestra. And then Mary Poppins, which there's the obvious famous scene there.
Well, we sort of talked about it with Who Framed
Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
And then Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which was another movie that
Loved
I saw
it.
a lot when I was a kid with Angela Lansbury.
Yeah, loved it.
And so all those movies, I thought that was really
Yeah,
that
any
was fun.
bed
It was cool.
floating or anybody floating or flying, I'm in.
All right. Okay. Well, if you guys would like to check us out on the web, it's at actorandengineer.com, facebook.com/actorandengineer. That's our Facebook page. And on Twitter, we're at actorengineer. And we will see you next week.
Until then.
Bye.